Hello, welcome to Nintendo Deep Dive. This is part 3 of my Wii games show and tell. And we're just gonna keep on trucking through that now. And I believe we were in the middle of 2010 when we stopped. So the next game we have on our list is a blank Xbox 360 case. But inside we have Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Now this game, I don't know if it's considered the best Spider-Man, but it's at one point I think it was the best one after Spider-Man 2. If I remember correctly. And I haven't played it, but the game is not set in an open world, but rather in discrete levels, though the levels are fairly sizable. And you control Noir Spider-Man or Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man 2099. I'm not sure if that's what he's called, but something like that. I believe Venom Spider-Man, and just regular old Spider-Man. And it was a multi-platform game. So the Wii version looks a bit soft, but the stylized graphics make it a feasible port on the system, and definitely worth picking up if this was the system you had. Like a very good looking game on the Wii. And after that, in September still, we got Aragorn's Quest, which is based off the movies somewhat, though it features a more stylized aesthetic. Not sure what you'd call it, but that's what it has going on. And now I've heard that this game isn't necessarily very good, but by my determinations, it sounds like a game I'll have fun with, as it features Wii motion sword fighting, and it's sort of like a Zelda game in some cases, and more just action adventure in others. And I like Lord of the Rings, both Peter Jackson's trilogy and just the source material, so I should glean some enjoyment out of it. But we shall see. And after that, we got Wii Party in October. Now, Wii Party is considered to be a very, very good game. Better than the Mario parties, many of them anyway, though I have not played a lick of it. but I have seen the one board that it takes place on. And yes, it only takes place on one board, but that board is very dynamic and large with lots of special instances and surprises. And I would really like to get some friends together to play Wii Party one day. Okay, not much I can say about it otherwise. And it is a first party published game developed by Indie Cube, who would go on to make Mario parties for Nintendo, though with mixed results. And again, I apologize that some of these discs are just in Xbox 360 cases. I'm not actually a collector. Like, I didn't buy these games for the sake of displaying and collecting them. I just wanted them in cases to be safe, and I bought the cheapest versions that I could find secondhand, and some of those versions just came in either generic cases or no cases at all. Anywho, after Wii Party, still in October, we got Kirby's Epic Yarn. Which this game, I don't know if I can find their logo. Oh yeah, there it is. Good feel. Right there. I consider this game to be their magnum opus, as it's not unlike its other game by them, where the aesthetic is based on arts and crafts. But this one is so tactile compared to the other games like Yoshi's Woolly World. And it's like you could actually, if you were ambitious enough, take take a scrapbook of some kind and sew on these yarn. I don't know how to describe it. These yarn scenarios or images onto that scrapbook, and you can make a yarn book out of the levels, or recreate the levels of this game in a yarn book, or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, that would be such a project. I wish I could actually do that, and I would do that just to give to somebody or something. But this game gives me that feeling. It's so tactile and real in a way, like feasible. The art style looks like it's something that could be done in real life, as opposed to the other ones, which are based off of arts and crafts. And Yoshi's Crafted World might also have that same sensation that this game gives me. But this game, the arts and crafts aesthetic, amazing, and the way it reacts to the player. It's all part of the tactility. Whether Kirby's pulling on a thread and a block of yarn is peeling off, or if Kirby goes into a door like here, you'll see his little person making a bulge in the fabric of that building. It's just really good stuff. It's a very, very easy game, so on a gameplay level, it's not necessarily very engaging, but it's creative enough and dazzling enough that I think it's going to be a good time all the same. Funny story about that game. When I was about 17 or 18, I bought that game, and when I found out you couldn't die in it, I just put it down altogether and I haven't played it since. And that is not my original copy. I don't know what happened to that. So after Kirby, shifting tone a bit, we got Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2. In this game, it was developed by Red Fly here, and they're very competent game developers on the Wii, to the point that where the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions of this game weren't actually considered all that good, this being a much inferior sequel, essentially rushed out. The Wii game, Force Unleashed 2, may in fact be more well liked than the first game on the Wii, which itself was already very, very well liked. And in large part due, again, to the cool motion gesture controls and force powers with the IR camera, and maybe just the fact that it's just a much better designed game, though very similar in scenarios. I haven't touched it, but people promote this as an example of a game that's better on the Wii than other systems, and it's a hidden gem. So after that, we got, well, not these two games. I'm just sorting out which game it is. Ah, here we are. After that, in November, with Force Unleashed coming out in late October, early November, we got 007 GoldenEye. And this is quite the game. Usually considered inferior to its N64 counterpart, or its N64 inspiration, rather. I would say that this game is quite a bit better than the N64 version, particularly in the level design and the controls department. The aiming in this game, you can modify it to your heart's content, change the bounding boxes for when your camera starts turning. Essentially, you can make your dead zone larger so your camera doesn't start moving within that space while you're aiming. Yada yada, all that. Turn off auto aim when you go down the sights because you're playing with Wii motion controls, so you don't really need those crutches. Anyway, what you come away with is really, really fantastic aiming. And from the level design perspective, the levels are, well, they're somewhat linear, but there's lots of space to move around in them in either a stealth capacity or a loud capacity, though not all levels have that dichotomy, but many do, and so the level design is actually really smart, and you know which way to go, while also being able to go that way through a number of different paths, I guess. This is like one of the only shooters I've actually played on the system to completion. I haven't touched the multiplayer, but the shooting in this game is unreal, and the single player campaign is really good. And the tank mission is actually much better in this version. And after GoldenEye, we got another shooter, Call of Duty Black Ops. And this is considered a very good version of this game. The visuals are definitely softer, and the enemy count is no doubt much smaller. But you exchange those things for the wonderful IR aiming. And, well, you just kind of choose what you want. Better gameplay or better visuals. I haven't played this version, or this game even, but I'm looking forward to it, because I love IR shooting. And that's what makes the Wii special, is you can only get these games on the Wii for the most part. And that came out in November. And after that, a few days later in November still, we got Sonic Colors by Sega. And this is considered the best Sonic game in a while. Maybe people like Generations more, but between this and Sonic Generations, this was a good time for Sonic games. And this is an exclusive to the Wii. And they remastered this game and re-released it on modern hardware maybe 2 years ago. But from what I hear, I'm actually better off just sticking with this copy of it. These black and white manuals bum me out. I haven't played it yet, but it's considered a very good Sonic game with lots of good ideas, such as these little spirits that give you powers like drill and other things. I just know about the drill one. It's not totally straight. And after Sonic Colors, we got Donkey Kong Country Returns. This is a fantastic game on the Wii. It has this unfortunate thing where you have to shake your controller to make Donkey Kong roll, but it's a small hiccup in the grand scheme of things and easy to deal with otherwise. But otherwise, this is the best Donkey Kong Country game, even though it loses some of the character that was in the first three. But it simply, well, it doesn't really lose that character so much as it takes all of it and just smashes it into the levels themselves. So, every level in this game tells a story, And as you go from one level to the next, you can see the outskirts of the next level at the end of the level you're in, just as at the start of the level you're in, you can see the remnants of the level previous, or prior, rather. So there's a lot of visual care and stuff like that. And it's in 3D, but or 2.5D, but they do this really great thing where while you are essentially traversing on a vertical slice of this world, the world around you still is very much a 3D environment. Hmm. I like that that manual has color, but it's not terribly interesting. My favorite level in this game is the one where you are, I don't know if it's this one, but you are on a pirate ship on foot, on a series of pirate ships, and you are essentially breaking those pirate ships in half to finish the level. And you're traversing the halls and the mass of the pirate ship. Um, in a 2D way, like you would expect for this kind of game, with the hull and the essentially like the ship is bisected down the middle, so you can see its innards and all of its moving parts. And it's just a very creative level, and this game's full of creative levels. One of the complaints it gets is that there's not too many animal buddies, which again is true. You only have Ramby the rhino, but at the end of the day, this is a well-crafted, high-production Donkey Kong Country and platformer. And so after Donkey Kong Country Returns, which was also in November, we got Epic Mickey, which I think the disc is going to fall out of this case when I open it. This is a game that is both beautiful and somewhat tedious, though I would say its beauty. There you go. I would say its beauty outweighs its tedium. And when I hear its creator, Warren Spector, I believe, very renowned game developer, talk about this game and how much he loves it, despite some of its mixed reception, I really applaud the guy for that. I think, he did a beautiful thing here, and you can tell that the people who made it really love the Disney IP, and it has this Fantasia like element to it, a bit of dark fantasy, a mixture of color and dark atmosphere. And it's really good for that. And the game's basically all about the neglected intellectual properties of Disney, such as Oswald the rabbit, who was present in like the 1930s, 1920s, I'm not sure. And the game looks really great. Like, it has a soft look that would actually be very ruined by it being in 1080p, which sounds like coping on my part, but legitimately, the game's kind of painterly softness really works in 480p, and I don't think it'd look good in 1080 unless they were able to put some kind of filter on it. But anyway, fantastic looking game. And early on, the first 5 hours of the game, they really show a lot of promise in the platforming, but then it kind of becomes a bit uninspired in the gameplay department, but still always beautiful. And if you're a Disney fan, you'll get enough out of it that you'll be smiling through the mundane gameplay sections. And after Epic Mickey, we would move into 2011 and get Lost in Shadow, which is an interesting game. For one reason, it is the last game developed by Hudson Soft. And Hudson Soft being the creator of Mario Party, and maybe I'm crazy, but I actually think they were the main publisher for the TurboGrafx 16. I could be crazy. Don't take my word for that. And at the very least, I think they were a major contributor, but they were the big people behind the big people. They were the developers behind Bomberman and Mario Party and Bonk, maybe? I think Bonk. So this game, last game they published, it's considered a hidden gem because its art style is, it consists of shadow projections. You are the shadow of a boy moving in a shadow world. Essentially, it's a side scroller game, so you are moving on and as shadows of these objects being cast onto a backdrop. And you can manipulate the real world to change the layout of your shadowy surroundings. It's kind of a puzzle platformer, and it looks fantastic. I don't know if it would carry the game through to the end, but I was excited to buy it, and I'm excited to play it still. And after Lost in Shadows, we got Mario Sports Mix, which this box art really grows on me. It's really nice box art. And this game, when it came out, it was not loved like the other sports games on Nintendo Wii, but it is actually a very creative game, particularly in the arenas that they make for it and how those arenas change for each of the sports, which that's the big thing with this game. You have 4 sports: volleyball, hockey, basketball, and dodgeball. And the levels that you play those sports in, the arenas, they are super creative. And there's even some interesting characters you can unlock from Square Enix's IPs, because Square Enix, in fact, developed this game. And let me just look inside here. Oh, that's a nice pamphlet. This is a really nice manual. It's got color. Anyway, again, not loved when it came out, and it was considered sort of a B, C tier release, But, putting things in perspective with the state of Mario sports games now and how they're drip fed content, and even then they're not ever that large or content rich. This game looks like gold nowadays. The sports are kind of shallow, but if there's four of them, they can't develop them to the degree that you could if you were just focusing on one. After all, game development is a zero sum game like that. Either way, ignore the Metacritic. The game has a lot to offer. And after Mario Sports Mix, we got The Blob. The Blob 2. And this is a sequel to The Blob 1. I think, unlike The Blob, it wasn't exclusive to the Wii. So perhaps the other versions might be technically better, but given the game's more simple, color saturated art style, I think it will look just fine on the Wii. And again, it's all about coloring a monochromatic space in a revolution of sorts. And it's a 3D platformer. I haven't played it, but looks enjoyable. After that, we get Conduit 2. In this game, what I'll say about it is it looks like a mid-gen Xbox 360 game. Of course, we're now in 2011 in late-gen Xbox 360 times. But this game, given how good it looks on this platform, well, that should be recognized. And the shooting controls, the customization of the controls that you get, or how you can customize them, rather. I apologize for my ineloquence. It seems like a really fun game. It has a short campaign and perhaps a ridiculous story, if what I've heard is true. But with how much I loved GoldenEye's shooting, I'm going to have a fun time with this game, especially since it looks considerably better than GoldenEye in the graphics department, too. So I really just bought it for more IR shooting. And that came out in April. And the ones before it, I should mention, came out in February. Mario Sports Mix and The Blob 2. And for 2011 in general, you are seeing essentially the Wii slow down in its releases. As in June, all the way from April, the only game we got, or the only game I got, maybe there was a second game that I don't have, is Wii Play Motion, which is a much better sequel to Wii Play, but it is still a pack-in title, being packed in with a Wii Sports, a Wii Motion Plus Wii remote. But for a $10 game, it is very generous and very zany, filled with lots of crazy ideas. And look at that, I don't have the disc. I wonder where it is. No matter. I think it's with my brother. So one of the crazy games you can do is space maintenance, where you fly around in a ship and put parts together, or there's treasure haul where you work together with another player to operate winches to pull up a mat holding treasure chests, and you essentially have to turn your Wii remotes like a crank in cooperation with one another. Or there's a much bigger version of the Duck Hunt game from We Play Motion, where now it's a big adventure where you're moving around in an on rails experience and shooting dinosaurs and aliens and all of that. Or, a T-Rex right here as an example. And then there's one game where you're looking for ghosts, and rather than pointing the Wii remote at the TV, you're actually pointing it around the room you're in. And when the Wii remote's rumble goes crazy, then you click on the trigger, and then you grab the ghost and you have to drag it back to the television screen into the ghost catching device. Pretty crazy for a $10 game overall. And for that reason, I do consider it its own release, but it is kind of a small offering. Not the best game, but a lot of fun with other people. My nephews loved that ghost game, and I just thought it was very creative. So after We Play Motion, skipping all the way to October, we had Kirby's Return to Dreamland, which I don't own physically, so can't show it, but that's a game that came out in October. And then in November, the game that came out, I think there was a few games that came out in November actually, but one of them I got was Generator Rex Agent of Providence, and I really can't say why I bought this game. I bought it for $6, but it looked cool, like a 3D platformer beat 'em up game based off of a show. It's not really the kind of game that I'm necessarily interested in, but at some point I was, at least for a brief moment. So there's that. And then also in November after that, we got well, I'm just going to pile these right here so I can grab them. In November, we got The Core Gang, which is published by Atari. Aesthetically, it reminds me of a Zoink game, which could be very well possible. It's a 3D platformer where you control a mech suit with 3 different people, or 2 different people and a dog, and you change the mech's powers and abilities based on which person's operating it in a 3D platformer. I heard good things about this one, actually. Very good things. So it was delayed forever, and it was supposed to come out on the 360, but it did not. And it came out as an exclusive for the Wii. I don't know how it will turn out, but I like that cover anyway. There's my Tatsunoko versus Capcom game, which, what a beautiful cover. And this is like the only legitimately, well, it's the only legitimate fighting game on the system, essentially. There is Guilty Gear Double X Accent Core, which is kind of a souped up port of a PS2 game, and it's not actually good on the Wii. But anyway, this is the game that's considered good. And I can't talk about it too much because, well, I just can't. I haven't played it. It's essentially like a tag team game where you tag out with different characters. What a marvelous manual, though. I'm running out of space here, sorry. My setup isn't perfect for this. I look forward to playing this game, but kind of need a second player. And there's my Excitebots game that I was talking about earlier as well. Super cool game. You control these robots that race around, and you essentially take part in these micro games as you're racing by hitting these icons, these floating icons. And when you do that, you can play a mini game where you have to throw a dart into the center of the board or bowl through a bunch of bowling balls or hold a bat and wait for a fastball to come your way and get a home run. That kind of stuff. Really ridiculous, zany game. And it's a sequel to Excite Truck in the much better game. But that is not what came out on the same day as the Core Gang. A much smaller game than the Core Game. It's a much smaller franchise. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. And like with all the other Call of Duties, it's a game I bought for the IR aiming. I think the graphics of this game suffer on the Wii more than the last two because they're considerably more complex and therefore it gets softened and jagged out. But I did buy it. Still in November of 2011, we got Rayman Origins, which was the first Rayman game to come out in almost 10 years. And this game, as you can see, I'm sorry that I'm not in the center of the camera, it's just how my setup is. This game, you can see the graphics are hand-drawn and beautiful. Very wacky and grotesque in a way, zany, but very beautiful hand-drawn art. And a solid platformer overall. I played it on the 3DS first, which is not how you should play this game. All of the detail gets lost and your character's too small and blah blah blah. But this is supposed to be a very great platformer, 4 players. And I bought it to play it proper. And after Rayman Origins, we got The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I have talked about this game on my channel before. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, but overall, it is a very creative and interesting title. And, well, font seems a little too small to read, unfortunately. It uses the Wii Motion Plus super well. Just comparing the disc art to the back art of the case, and they are almost identical. And yeah, the Wii Remote, the Wii Motion Plus sword fighting is super creative, and they actually could have pushed it farther in the game by just making the enemies more difficult, but should you really get involved with it, you can have a really great time with it. And that's my favorite thing about the game. It's got very good dungeons, has some missteps, all of which I've talked about in detail on my review for it, and I'll just leave it at that. And that was the Zelda game we were really waiting for on the system. And then after that, in August of 2012, this is the last physical game I own, and that is the Last Story. Very nice cover here. This is a very cool RPG as it combines real-time combat with tactics combat and a little bit of MMO stuff too, but I actually like the way the combat looks in this game. And the game looks very beautiful in a very stark, sort of desaturated way. Like very nice graphics. And it's supposed to be a very good RPG on the system. Not as good as Xenoblade Chronicles, which came out in April, but I could potentially actually prefer it. And it was part of Operation Rainfall, so it came out a few years, or maybe 1 year prior in Europe. And so people clamored for it, and that version came out into the US. So everything, I believe everything is very British as far as voice talent goes. I haven't played it, but it looked really good, and I paid a bit of money for this one. And that is my last game. So let me straighten that out. So I'm going to stand up. It's going to make horrible noise, me creaking my chair. But before I do, for whatever reason in my chronological cataloging, I did not know where to put Guilty Party, which is a very cool game. It takes place in like a little dollhouse, essentially, like the setting, like where the interior is all opened from the side, and it's a game where you solve mysteries cooperatively in a party game way, done by Disney, of course. That's all I could say about it, and I don't know where to place it. I guess I was just being sloppy. So I'm gonna put these games together in one stack for you to see, but before I do that, it's said that the Wii essentially died halfway through its life cycle, but if you were paying attention, 2010 was the best year for the Wii, and 2011 was a come down, but there were still a dozen games that came out in that year. So that idea, that notion, that talking point really doesn't hold water, as for 5 of the games or of the system's 6 years on market, it was pretty healthy. In 2012, it definitely was basically done. You had Rhythm Heaven come out, Xenoblade Chronicles, and The Last Story. And then in 2013, April 2013, you got the last game from Project Rainfall, Pandora's Tower, which is a very good game. But after that, there's really nothing worthwhile that came out. Maybe Mario Party 9, but that's not a particularly good Mario Party, so that's stretching. And overall, I mean, throughout the system's life cycle, there was 127 127 worthwhile games that came out on it, including 20 or so WiiWare titles. Now, I can't guarantee that all of those games were worthwhile. I've played about 35 Wii games, but that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good software output for the system, even if it's not as high as its counterparts. And it definitely flies in the face of the notion that there was some first party games and some Wii sports games and then all shovelware. In fact, you can see that the system is full of many, many hidden gems. So I'm going to try to stack this one stack on top of my much taller stack, and then I will display it. And then I have to go to work. I had to put it down because it was wobbling quite fiercely, but there's your visual representation of the Wii library, minus a few key additions. And that will do it for this Wii Games Show and Tell. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you have a God bless day wherever you are. And please look forward to more content from Nintendo Deep Dive, including more show and tell videos. Thank you.